In this video, we're going to model the true folding knife in Plasticity. I start off by drawing out some simple curves, very similar to using the Create Polygon tool in Maya. I just need to get a sheet that I can pull out some geometry. So just a really simple crude block out, and then using some additional edges to mark where the flat part of the blade is and where it curves. So just putting in these lines or edges where I'm going to have it taper down to the sharp cutting part and then also the spine. So a straight line here, and then I use a curve to get the back end of the blade. It doesn't need to be like super precise, but I'm going to go ahead and snap that to the edge using the control and then match this up as best as I can. So just move this over a little bit, and we can see that it's a sheet because it's blue, and I'm going to go ahead and isolate it and then pull this up just to establish the thickness here. From there, what I can do is I can start moving some of these edges, and I can either loft them to get the angle at a G0, which is planar. So here I'm just kind of testing things out to see what it's going to give me, see if it's going to be good. This part here is going to be the tricky part, is where it's at a angle and then it also curves into the back end. So I go ahead and just isolate this and draw an edge and try to see if it will let me loft from here. It's probably not going to, because that one corner doesn't line up. So I'll go ahead and line up this one edge, snap it to the corner. There we go. And just give it a test to see if it's going to give me anything desirable. The loft is horrible, so I kind of need to fix this. So to do this, there's a few different things that we can do. We could just draw a line through it to kind of segment it, give it another kind of position, and then I need to form the bottom silhouette. So just dragging out a simple curve, lining it up, and then pulling it up to make sure it doesn't intersect with itself. So now I should be able to loft the smaller section with a G0 and a G1, and then the section to the right either with a common loft. So here I need to make sure I have segmented edges, so I can either delete and then just create them, or I could split an edge. So here I just trim that edge and go ahead and loft again, and then select the adjacent edges. To get this corner, I just want the one spot. So there's a few different ways I could do this again. One, I could just copy the edge and trim it, or I could have combined those sheets with the main body. So here, deleting the thickness so we don't have anything kind of getting in the way, and taking these and joining them together with J. So now I should be able to loft these together, and it looks like it's pretty good. Not the best transition there, but it's good enough to continue. So I'm just, again, establishing the shapes. I always can go in and take one of those edges, pipe it to get some separation, and then re-loft in between if I feel like my transitions aren't good. I take the whole border edge and I duplicate it, and then I just Z-fight it down, or smash it so it's flat. And this is going to give us the thickness of the blade. So from here, I should be able to loft in between these, just straight down. And immediately we already have a solid. So that means we're in pretty good shape. If our solid is there, I couldn't see anything, so I just hit M and change the material to 0.1. Now I'm going to go ahead and use another reference and cut this to the correct shape just by creating that and using the cut tool and just getting rid of the excess geometry. All these images don't line up exactly. This was a demonstration to kind of show you guys the workflow. Of course, when I modeled this for the knife that you've seen on my ArtStation, I made sure to line up all the reference images beforehand and get rid of any kind of like foreshortening or distortion, so they all lined up really nicely. But here, instead of, I could have just brought in another edge and cut it, but instead I just chamfer, until it kind of disappears through the other end or the boundary box, and then do another chamfer just to kind of get the angle of that bottom edge that I want. So I can go ahead and grab that one again, and you can see it just go in, fillet it. You can see just keep pushing it. It's going to eventually kind of smooth itself out. So that looks pretty good. I can go ahead and punch this right now. We'll see later that it's probably not the best idea to punch this out now when you only have half the knife, because if I ever want to patch it later, if there's a hole through it, can become difficult. Here we're again using the cut, get rid of that piece. Really simple. So already very quickly it already feels like the knife blade. I tend to like to use either just a nice little chamfer on the edges of my metal objects to kind of make them have a very clean bezel, but that's pretty simple. So here, just bring out a cylinder to get these grooves at the top. I'm setting up a Boolean operation, and then I can go for a rectangle array, which allows me to drag them out in a line. Here I'm just counting how many there are. I think I miscounted and said 5, but there's actually a 6th one right there. So there you go, they're equal distance. And then we just do a difference Boolean, and the teeth on the top of the spine are right in. This the teeth on the serration on the blade takes a little bit more effort. So just do a 3-point curve. Have a couple of control points at the top, and then I'm just going to line these up and create the pattern. So this is a 1 large then followed by 2 small. So once I get 1, I can go ahead and just duplicate that, and if I need to do any adjustments, I can go ahead and adjust these. So once I have the pattern, duplicate and just move it into position. And if I want to do any other additional tweaking at all, I can do it right here. So probably when I modeled the the higher quality version, again, the photos were distortion was taken out, so these were probably all roughly the same size. There probably wasn't this much change from set to set. So this last one's a little bit interesting because it goes like all the way through. So I just go ahead and just drag it all the way to the edge. I can take all of these edges and just join them together so I get one curve. And then what we can do is we can use them we can either imprint them or we can cut them. I think actually here we could try this. I tried pushing it through, but it doesn't want to work. So I could just take those, imprint, and then delete. Cutting would have worked fine too. Probably would have been better. But once I have that shape, I now need to get rid of the thickness and the back part. So this has to kind of be redone. So I need to draw this in here so I can get rid of this face. And then I need to get rid of the back part too. So right now there's not a sharp part of the blade. So I need to create that. So with this new edge in, I need to now fill in this gap. I select the same edges, duplicate them, and Z smash them down to 0, and then put them into place, and then we just loft them with G0, and we join it with the main body. By selecting the curve of the teeth that we already have from the edge, I can take that, duplicate, bring it down, and then just line it up to where it goes. So you can see it just goes down a little bit, so just match it up. We need to move the pivot with V, so it's the pivot is correct. So again, it needed to be Z smashed again. So sometimes it just typed in 0, make sure you right click, then hover over where it goes. So we can see now we have a part that has a different angle. It's much steeper, so it's even sharper. And then I need to go ahead and extend this. If you want that along the same trajectory, you just go ahead and select the pivot and select the edge. So now we need to form the tip so it forms a solid sheet. Just like that, that looks good. And because this curve was duplicated from the loft, you can see that there's all these extra control points, right? Way more than I need. So I use rebuild curve and then just go down to like 0.1. And so now I have less control points. I don't need all of those. So that will happen anytime you duplicate an edge to a curve. If I would have, another thing I could have done is just taken the original curve that I had, that I imprinted, and I could just move that down. But this matches exactly, and now I'm just making sure that I'm getting some nice shapes in this part here. So just adjusting these where these are lining up. Just a little bit of tweaking, but this is kind of fun. But this might be the most time-intensive part of the whole project, is just taking these curves and making sure that you're maintaining some nice shapes. The cool part here is that you don't even have to put in-betweens at the point of each of these teeth. Like when we loft this using a G0, it's simply just going to go straight down. So I don't even have to put anything in between. It's kind of crazy. So then select. This doesn't line up very good, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust this curve a little bit just to make sure that I have, about equal distance here. So I'm trying to keep, I'm looking to see how thick this is looking, from the main body. I'm just trying to have something consistent. If I need more, I can always select that edge and rebuild it and add, give myself a few more control points if I feel like I need them. So I could split that curve if I felt the need. So just go ahead and just, select all of these. Just, these, if you hold Shift or Alt, you're going to get the whole border. So you have to select these one by one. And then just go ahead and loft by G0 and it should be good. And then join them together. And you should have a very sharp looking blade. Here, if at the top, I want to give, again, a machine finish. So I go ahead and just select all of these and I chamfer them. That looks soft, right? So that's not the look I'm going for. So I want to chamfer them. Just a little bit. Gives a really nice kind of cool finish. And then here I can just push face here for this transition to match up a little bit nicer. So right now I'm just taking a look at everything, and I need to go ahead and delete that so I can then patch the back. So now it's a solid. You always want to make sure that your meshes end as a solid. And so now we know that this is good. Now I'm going to go ahead and repunch in the hole where the pivot is. So with that hole there, sometimes it can be challenging for it to know how to patch, even if you select both the inner and outer edge. So we just go ahead and redo that, rechamfer. Then I'm taking a look at my, now that I have half, just go move the pivot, make sure that I move it to the halfway point. So right here, I'm struggling, apparently having it snap to the grid. It's not wanting to cooperate, oddly enough. So maybe this is the final boss, is getting it to want to snap to the grid. So we're going to go ahead and mirror it. Right now it doesn't want to mirror. So if it doesn't want to mirror, it probably means that it's actually not across the line, something's going on. So if I remember right, one of the edges was not planar, so I just fixed that. I noticed that was not the nicest transition, so I went and redid this with X nerves and just did G0 around, except the transition connection to G1. And so you can see it's just a cleaner transition. Here, this edge here, it's probably fine. But to clean that up, I can just come in and bring in a breaking edge before the teeth. So right now I'm just going to try to see what X nerves give me, and you can see I lose a lot of that planarness of it. And so I'm just going to drop an edge and imprint it here, so I can have an edge before the teeth and then just treat the teeth as one. So there we go, we imprint. I can select those and delete, and I should be able to just trim that or do clean up, and then we should loft this, and it should loft where X nerves. You can see X nerves figures it out very quickly. And G1 on those, G0 on the rest. Merge it together or combined. Okay. And then we're going to re-mirror. So just by doing that, you can just see it's quite a bit cleaner, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at where we're at. So there I just put the rest of those curves in a folder, because I have a tendency to do a lot of curves when I'm modeling in Plasticity, and I need to get a better job of putting them in folders and keeping my curves organized. So to build this little thumb guard here, I am simply just drawing out a circle, getting the shape that it sits in, and then we're going to start building up the shape. So very similar to like kind of building the hat on the fire hydrant. Just, extrude it out, kind of get the depth right. And then here you can use extrude if you like, or offset to bring it up. And then I'm going to go ahead and chamfer the edge, so that way I can create a dome and then bring it down. Now once this is down, now this is a unified shape that I can kind of just bring up and down at will. Another offset, and then we will bring this down and then kind of give a bowl shape to right there at the end. So right here, some of these edges are getting really close together, so I'm just going to kind of bring them up and down till I kind of simplify the geometry, and that will allow me to interact with the shape a little bit easier. So I do the same thing there. I just bring it up, right click, and now you can see that extra edge is gone really quickly. So it's pretty easy shape to make once you know, and it just adds a cool little detail to the knife. And if you're gonna do like a full disassembly on the product, I'm gonna go ahead and model kind of everything, right? So then we're gonna mirror it, or at least try to, right? So if it failed, do it again. Looks like we're good. So then, like I said, trying to get in a better habit of naming stuff. So here's the blade front detail, and blade back detail. Usually when I'm done with a piece, I'll end up moving it into like the project group. So that completes pretty much the blade. We'll check it to make sure it's the right length and everything. Now let's go ahead and move on to the handle. The handle, we're going to do the same approach. We're just going to use edge lines and curves. Either is fine. And you can see I'm trying to keep it as basic as possible. I'm not even regarding some of those small curves on the ends, because I can chamfer those at any time. So the simpler it is, the easier it is to kind of just move things around with a few points and make sure that you have, pleasing shapes. So just move these around, and I'm lining up to the thicker part of the object here. I'm going to try to collapse these, but there's an edge there that I'd have to delete to get rid of. So I just kind of put these back. I can just chamfer them back onto themselves if I like. So again, simple is better. Give it a little bit of thickness, and so you can see it. You can go ahead and select and change the material with M. And now we can go ahead and soften some of these transitional pieces with chamfers. So you can do this by control point too. You can also chamfer fillet control points. I tend to see it a little bit better when there's actually some volume. And here we can just delete that. We should be able to dissolve that face now, yeah. And then let's go ahead and just fix that guy up. Really simple. It looks good. It looks good already. Let's go ahead and punch a hole to where the pivot goes. So just drop in a circle. Pull it up. And here you can either you could do these with curves if you like, or here I was trying something a little different using circles as kind of like a template. So just dragging out circles in each of the corners, scaling them in. Obviously this back one probably would have been a little bit faster just to do with some curves, but just wanted to try something new and see how it worked. And then here I'm just going to go ahead and use the line tool to go in between. And so once it creates a solid sheet, you can see I can go and trim all those. I have a solid sheet. And then I realized, oh, well, it would have been faster just to do one, join them together, duplicate, and then I can just adjust this one because it's a similar shape, right? So you can see part of getting quick at using any software is just, deconstructing the main object and reusing stuff that you already have, right? So even this one being drastically different, I can come in here and maybe even get this to work, but maybe this one's a stretch. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim some of these up. and see what I can do. Doing the best I can with what I got. But yes, you can see some of it still works, and the ones that don't, just trim and then recurve the ones that need to be redone. So it can be fairly quick if you don't have to do everything again. So I didn't like that one, so I just redrew the corner. So let's go ahead and put those in and rear off to the races here, guys. So once these shapes are in, I can just bring them all to thickness and then boolean them out. With the pivot, I just draw down the shape, and once I have the shape, I can duplicate that shape and get the negative shape, save itself, so I have it for later, right? So, there's multiple ways how to do it. So here, this is way too thick, so now I can just bring this down and kind of scale it to the thickness I need. We'll do an offset, and we'll punch the hole. We're good to go. One of the cool features of this knife is, all the kind of cool exposed hardware. You can see through it, and also, the distinct edging that's like at an angle. So before I get to that, I'll just quickly as I have it, just boolean these through really quickly. And now we're going to select the outer edges and the inner edges, and we're going to go ahead and hit it with a chamfer. And I kind of know the position of where it goes based on how close these are. So I own this knife, so I know these things aren't quite that close to the corners. Again, that's probably just from distortion in the photo. On these inner parts, I add also a smaller chamfer, just a small one. Just gives a nice finished look to it. Go ahead and shrink these down a little bit so they're not intersecting with the other details. Just trying out some stuff, but I think what I end up doing is just going ahead and scaling all of these just ever so slightly. That way I can give them a finished look and a little bit of breathing room between the other negative shapes. Something like that. We'll go ahead and do the same thing here on the pivot. So again, very quickly we're able to create that handle. And then notice I create what handle I create first. I create the more simple side. And then the second handle, I'm just going to duplicate it by mirroring it. And then I have a separate reference for this one. So the back handle that has like the safety guard on it, what I need to do is I need to change a little bit of the geometry, not much, but there's things are a little bit of a different scale than we'll see. So I have this other image, and I'm just going to go ahead and scale it, put it into position and scale it. So usually, like I said, I would, if I was being super particular about the project, I would have done this meticulously in Photoshop where it matches up near perfect. And so I know everything is basically as close as it can be. So here you can see that this one's a little bit smaller, so I just scale it in. I just scale it in, and I can rotate it a little bit. I can move it up and down and get it into the position. So this is kind of crazy to me that I can take an existing shape and I have like all of this control just by selecting the faces, moving and rotating it. So, with that done, I now need to cut in, the spot, and try to move these a little bit. But it's a little bit rounder, so I'll just maybe fillet this one. If you run into an issue where it's not filleting the whole edge, fillet the top, the first edge, and then fillet the other one separately. They don't have to match up exactly. Again, this is the high poly model. Even on the low poly model, most of those edges, most of the time, won't match up. Here I'm just going to have a simple cube, fillet the edge, and then we're going to boolean it out, and you can see it makes that nice kind of divot there. And we can go ahead and I can see if I can try to adjust these, but again, these might fail because they're the complexity of the face. And so here I'll just, again, I'm going to use that same trick, just do one, then do the other. After doing that, you can see I lost that chamfer on the bottom, so I just go ahead and rechamfer it so it matches the others. Now, when the knife pulls out, you can see that this guard kind of goes down that prevents the knife from folding back in on itself. So just drawing a few simple edges is enough to do this. I can tell that this is intended to be straight down, so I'm just kind of lining it up maybe a little bit better because I know what it looks like versus the distortion. I take that edge and I pipe it, and I do a vert count of 4 and angle of 45, which basically gives me a cube, like if I was to extrude it along an edge in Maya. On this one, all the faces didn't come with it, so I'm going to go ahead and grab these, and I think I tried to match face, but didn't want to, so I'll just move them by hand and snap to it. Then clean it up, and now we're just going to boolean these in, maybe give it a little bit of thickness first. Okay, so again, we're just making the negative shape, and now we'll select the mesh. We can rotate it a bit, and we can make sure it just goes all the way through, and then boolean. Checking to see if I like how everything looks. I think this is looking pretty good so far. So again, just checking the mesh, isolating, seeing if everything's looking and feeling right. Like we can see clearly the knife pivot doesn't match up with the handle, and these are the back's in the front and the front's in the back. So I just type in -1 on each, and I move them back into position. Okay, so now the front's in the front, the back's in the back. Let's go ahead and move the knife pivot with V, and then Control. Remember, Control is to snap to the center, really snap to anything, and now I'm just testing, does it match up? I think I might have actually scaled the blade a little bit, and that was a little bit thick, so we moved it, and then we will chamfer that edge to match. Here I tried to pull that down thinking that that other edge would come with me. It wasn't, so I'll just go ahead and move that one up. If that was an issue, I could just grab both edges and move them both down with the Translate tool. Clearly that area doesn't interpede into the pivot, so let's just go ahead and move it. And it basically heals itself, right? Like it's really pretty cool. But yeah, that looks pretty good. Here I forgot that there actually needs to be an inner part of the screw, of the handle for the screw to sit in. So since I forgot that part, I need to go ahead and create that kind of little area of metal where the screw sits, like the insets. So we just go ahead and match this to the bottom. And then what we'll do is just grab the top with a offset, and just push it down. Grab the make sure it's not sticking out anywhere. It looks fine. And we can go to if we want, we can go to face mode. Sometimes, and then we can just offset. So face, move it down. Then offset, and then we can just pull that all the way through. It just automatically creates a hole. It's pretty cool. So now we have these. Just go ahead and duplicate them. If you got it right the first time, you'd be ahead. So this happens. Sometimes I will make a mistake when I'm doing it, and that's fine. So go ahead and duplicate those. Left me an extra one, so because I need to do it on the other. These weren't perfect, so here I'm going to go ahead and select the face and just try to match face. That kind of worked, not really. So this one here I think does, but this last one I'm not sure. At first I thought that the area was not planar, which wouldn't make sense. So I just shift delete, and then we go and we patch, then hit down or whatever you have assigned to delete redundant topology. And then it's all clean. So we'll do the same thing on the other handle, is we need to add these in. And, you know, if you're not doing a breakaway, it probably doesn't matter. But again, I want to just kind of show you guys what I did, especially if you want to do like a cool breakaway, you know, kind of a disassemble of your product, which I think is kind of cool. Just move the pivot with V and then Control, hover over the edge, hover with Control again. It's everything's just snap together, clean up again. Basically, the handle's complete, right? For the back loop, I'm just gonna trace it out here. Just a simple shape. Try to line it up as kind of best I can. Again, that basic, you know, the belt loop, the loop part is kind of matches up with the profile of the handle. Now that we have the basic shape, we can go ahead and just bring it out a little bit and just make sure it fits. Looks like we got lucky. Let's go ahead and grab those edges and give them a nice little fillet. Again, super quick, super quick. I'm then going to take a look at the corner after changing the material, just creating a cube, give it some nice volume, and then all I need to do is just move it to position and just rotate it down. You know, how much do I want to take away? So super quick way on how to do it. So again, whenever I think, if I'm ever having a hard time making a shape in CAD, it's often I overthought the way that the person who manufactured it made it. So this is, instead of doing this all at once, I'm just going to grab these and then I'll do these separately. I think I end up just leaving those, having a nice kind of plane change there. So again, how you treat your edge can help define the pieces. So I'm giving a very certain edge quality to all of my metal pieces that are supposed to be hard. For the belt loop, or the loop on the back, just a couple cylinders, make a sheet, trim what's in between, you can either select the edges and join them, or you can just pull it right out. You're just creating the negative shape, rotate it, put it into position, and once you're happy with it, make sure it goes all the way through, boolean it, accept, looks pretty good, and then you can just go ahead and polish off that edge if you want to have a nice edge on it. So again, very quick, you can have all the stuff put together, and you wouldn't even need to add these insets, like where the screws go through, unless you're doing a disassemblies, but I think I'm going to, so I'll go ahead and just grab that face, duplicate, hatch it, put it into position, and then I can just hold control and move it into place, and it's in a match. So these looks like they're probably good enough. So let's go ahead and boolean them, and then we can go and add the finishing touches right there. So you can see very quickly we have that done, and we're getting close to the end here. So what else do we have to do? There's a couple holes that are where the clip can go. So the clip can actually go on the front of the handle or near the back of the handle. So you can adjust it to your liking. So just grab a couple cylinders. I know it doesn't intersect that bevel or the pivot, so I can kind of see where they're supposed to be. Okay, it doesn't need to be perfect, but you know, it should look believable. Okay, I can take these and just give them a nice finished edge all at once. Just a little bit. So I think that looks pretty good. So here we're going to go and create the pivot. So for the pivot, I'll just use the same circle that I used before and kind of move it down. I need to be able to see where the rings are on the pivot. So I just change the material, and what I can do is just select the face, do an offset, and I'm just lining up the edge, do an offset, line up the edge. And here, if you want, you could do another. That's probably unnecessary. But grab those edges and just pipe them and change it to 3. And here I was trying to get a little less thickness, but I think the lowest is what works, so I just accepted, and it actually matches up quite nice. To get this star bit, I was going to try a polygon, but ended up just doing 2 triangles. Just grab 2 triangles, duplicate, and rotate the triangles. That might be the hardest part of the whole thing, is just getting that rotation on the locked axis that you want. So just go ahead and rotate it and move it to the center. Okay, so you want them fairly lined up, and then you can just go ahead and grab all these and just pull the face down, get the shape. I go ahead and isolate and then just grab all of the edges, just marquee, select. You can taper it too, give it a little bit more personality. But if you grab all of them and just fill it in, it'll be a little bit softer of a transition, because it's not like they're a little bit rounded on the inside and the outside, right? I go ahead and centered it and bevel. So on the top edge, you can also soften that too if you like. So yeah, very quickly you can make kind of these pretty cool shapes. And that would be enough if it was a knife that was just held together. But I'm going to go ahead and add a full screw. I add an additional piece for the tip of the screw, add a spiral, and then pipe the spiral at 3 at 45 degrees, gives the thread. And that additional tip allows me to kind of bring it back and just push it in and kind of get the shape of the head of the screw that I want. Always make sure to grab that additional face at the end and just pull it through, and it'll get a really, really nice finish. Chamfer the top, so you get a nice... So between each one of these parts is kind of a bushing of some kind. So I just need to create like a piece that kind of matches, that fits in between. So yeah, so just bring out a cylinder, kind of struggling to put it into place, but just match it up to where it goes. I think on the real thing there's another inset in between. If you want to add that, you can. Go ahead and just offset, punch it through, and here's our cool little kind of bushing, if you will, in between. So I think I got it just right. So yeah, it's more like this. You can see it's just a spacer that goes between, and then just mirror it. Try it again. Mirror. Make sure you click. If you click combine, then you don't have to boolean them together. So here's the spacer that exists at each one of the locations of hardware. So I'm just going to duplicate those and put them in place. It's pretty simple. Just go ahead and move it down, duplicate the last one, move it into place. We're almost there, right? So what do we have left to do? We need to make a few screws. You only really need to make one. Start with the cylinder, a circle, move it up. Go ahead and just round off the top of the screw head. Polygon to create a Phillips head. Drag it down. I tend to taper these things a little bit. It tends to look a little bit nicer in the model. And so we'll go ahead and punch that in with a boolean and just give it a little bit more depth, right? Let's isolate the screw head, and again, let's go ahead and make the screw. I can just go ahead and duplicate that sheet, and then I can extrude it. Now I have the shaft of the screw, and we'll go to our spiral, click the bottom of the side, choose how many turns you want, and then might have had too many, but I think it finally does read. And then we can just pipe it. And then we're going to boolean the threads out. So again, screws are super simple. Go ahead and push out that edge to clean it up. And this is why I usually have a separate mesh, because it's really difficult to, bevel that edge. So instead, I extrude it out and then bring this in. So it's not perfectly round, but it matches. Again, this is a small detail that it's not going to really be noticeable. So just move it up into position, scale it down, move it up, boolean them together, and really quickly, again, you have a screw. So I can go ahead and then test these out and put them into the other spots. Make sure you rotate them a little bit so they all aren't facing the exact same position. Just a little bit. And you can see they go past the halfway point, so I'll just go ahead and scale them, make sure they look fairly good, like how they would fit, and go ahead and mirror them to the other side. So yeah, we have all the screws in just a matter of a few minutes. So, for the clip, we're going to start with an edge, use a curve to get the curved parts, bring in another flat line and just make sure these line up. Don't want to get too sloppy with it. I want to make sure that I have a solid. So yeah, we just bring that in, super easy. Then we can actually just use an edge and be very rough with this, right? So, here, you can see that doesn't look all too great, but we can just go ahead and, again, less points, we can make sure that we have the position. It looks like it's way too long, so let's back that up a little bit, right? And then I can go ahead and join these together, scale it down so it's more accurate, and then move these down. Just make sure everything looks fairly good, right? On these, I'll go ahead and fill these, and you can see those soften up real quick. And then I'm going to take the edge or the curve, and I am going to just make sure everything looks quite nice, and then we can duplicate it and then loft to get the actual sheet. Once we have the sheet, we can grab it and use thicken to bring thickness to that shape, and then we can make the corners a little bit nicer. But it's actually, this one's kind of cool. It's like at an angle. I tried to move it to kind of see if it would let me do it, but it wouldn't. So just bring in a curve and then cut, just slices it off, and then let's polish that up. There we go. There we go. So real quick, we can make it look quite nice, and then let's do the same thing on the bottom and all those edges. And this will just make this look different than how I'm giving treatment to the other parts of the model. So let's go ahead and try placing this down. So I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate these and punch the hole that goes through through the clip. So I'm going to move these in a little bit and Boolean, and then I'm just going to move. All right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and move these holes on the base of the handle over so they match, and we'll go ahead and move the pivot and move that down so it's lined up. And then all we need to do is duplicate a couple of the screws and put them in place, and we're pretty much done. So yeah, with getting just used to curves and lofting surfaces and the flexibility, you can make some fairly complicated shapes in plasticity very quickly, a lot faster than I could in subdivisions. I think this whole model took me roughly about an hour and a half to make. So let's go ahead and put it back to a full solid, duplicate and rotate so you guys can see the finished product. Hope you guys learned something, and I look forward to seeing what you guys make